So you might be noticing the video looks a little bit different. I ended up switching cameras. That way the video on this camera is going to look a lot more clear and more defined. That way you can see everything properly. So in the package we have, just want to make sure there's nothing else. Okay. In the package we have our arms, a spare arm, top and bottom plate, and hardware as needed. This is just the invoice. You're going to take out all these parts and have them all laid out properly. One thing that I noticed in the video that Evan Turner has made is these are actually more durable than traditional boomerang arms, meaning the fibers are, instead of 90 degrees like this, they're actually offsetted a little bit, so they're a lot stronger, and that's something I really liked when I watched his video on the frame. What you want to start is your two plates here. You're going to have your top and your bottom, so keep that in mind. The top is differentiated by here. This is for the camera mounting, for angle locking right here. See the two posts here? It's designed to have like a fixed angle mount for your camera. So that's how we're going to differentiate them today. So for hardware, we have M3, M4 hardware here. Our standoffs, stack screws, but we're not going to get into why this is how it is, because I know a lot of people have just seen that it's M4 hardware, not traditional M3. But let's start with the assembly. The press nuts are going to go away from the body, and we're going to grab our bottom plate and set it on just like this. You're going to grab 2 of your M4 countersunk screws, since that's how it's going to be in this build. I apologize, I made a mistake. It's supposed to go like this, since there's an M3 hole here. It locks in just like so. So you're going to take your 2.5mm driver and your 2mm, I believe, and we're going to install this onto the arm. Have that all completed. It should look something like this. I did use 2 long, if I didn't mention before, the 2 long M4 and the 1 M3 screw here. There is a nut here which I don't know, or press nut I should say, sorry. I don't know why this is here. I'm pretty sure this is a spare, but this is how it should look. I just realized I made a mistake. You do not want to use this. That was, I don't even know why I'm being stupid. It is countersunk, so don't make the same mistake that I'm making. I just looked, there are provided M3 countersunk screws. I'll show you those right now. There they are. They look a little something like this, and they're going to go through the holes here of each plate. So actually moving on to our top plate, we're going to do the same thing once again. You want to also make sure, if you don't know which way the screws are supposed to go, there's a little chamfer here, so for the screws to sit in perfectly, that way everything's neat and as strong as possible. So we're going to do the same thing. Plate up, press nuts away, going to go underneath, install our 2 long M4 and our M3 screw. One thing I do like a lot about this frame, and I've noticed, is the hardware is very minimal. Especially, I mean, with my Source 1v5, there was a lot of hardware involved. I don't know if that's because it's like an open source frame and you could fit a lot of different components, but I do like the factor that this is like minimal and that it's just super strong. That's another thing I want to mention is when you're doing this, tighten your stuff down. At least from what I learned with the Z style frames or the ZIGZAG styled, everything has to be strong, everything has to be stiff. You don't want it mid-race getting unnecessary vibrations or something's loose and gives leverage to snap. Make sure you tighten everything down, and also you might forget, so it's something to keep in mind. Now before we put on the 2 pieces, now we're going to install our M4 standoffs. And you're going to put them here and on these 2 screws like so, and tighten them down nice and good. I will go back and tighten them a little more just for right now though. And honestly, you really don't have to. I mean, they're pretty tight as it is. You do it how you need to, but you should just tighten them on just like this. Nice and tight. Actually, I have pliers here that I can do it quick, but just to show you, I'll tighten them off camera really quick. But this is how it should look, and now we are ready to put our 2 pieces together. Should have something like this once you've completed it, and if you did it right, you should get that feeling of, wow, this looks awesome. Very simplistic, very sleek in my opinion. Very cool racing frame, definitely out of the ordinary. Oh, and if you were wondering why it is called ZIGZAG, as you can see, the Z. See? Z, yeah, yeah, maybe I'm getting somewhere, yeah. So now, with our frame fully intact, we are now going to grab the hardware needed for the next step, which is actually installing our motors and our AIO board. We are given a set of stack screws, countersunk, and button head, I believe. I don't know exactly what these are for, but I do know the countersunk screws I'm going to be using to go underneath to put the stack on. First things first, we're going to get our motors out. And as nice as they are, as if you can notice, some people are going to say, wait a minute, there is 4 holes. Why is there only 2? I believe the factor for the only 2 holes is just for lightweight accessibility, I believe. I actually don't know why it's only 2. So our motors are actually going to go like this. And if you can see on the bottom, it's actually going to go this hole to this hole. So it's going to go boom, just like so. And our motor wires are going to run along like so. How I think I'm going to run this, I believe, is I think I'm actually going to have to run it underneath like this, or I believe like this. So we're going to see how I'm actually going to mount this. But for right now, let's get all 4 motors on and I'll get back to it. I actually wanted to show you how to install the first motor and a little note to keep in mind. When installing motors, you may notice that these screws are actually perfect to length. You don't want them too short or too long because they can protrude up into the copper windings. It can actually destroy your motor or even arc. So as you can see, let me see if I'll install it for you really quick. Once I have these installed, you can see they don't protrude or they're not too short. So like say in a crash, the motor won't rip off and fly and cause a lot of damage. You can see it's actually perfect. It's okay if it goes up a little bit, but not too far where it goes into the winding. So something to just keep in mind. I'll get all 4 on and get right back to it. Okay, so what I noticed about this is I wanted to take off the top plate so that I can actually install the electronics, but I noticed once you take the top plate off, the arm has to come off too. So in order for me to actually know how long I need my motor wires, I actually just took off the top plate and then reinstalled the arm so that I basically still have the exact length that I'm going to need in order to install the motor wires. So if you're wondering how to do it and how to install your electronics without, taking out the arm, this is how I did it. So right off the bat as well, people are also going to notice, or maybe just by the way you're looking at it, you're kind of thinking, how is that going to fit? So technically this frame, I believe at the moment, does not offer a 30 by 30. Traditionally, a lot of stacks used in racing are 20 by 20, or I think 25 by 25.5, I believe. So what I'm going to end up doing is it's on the printer right now, is 3D print a mount so that it's slightly off and that it can mount properly through the screws. And I'm actually going to use these nylon nuts that are given here, and kind of work with what I have. And I also noticed as well that this wasn't going to work, so I actually had to resolder it going this way so that the VTX right here can mount properly on top. So once that mount is done, I will be right back. So now that I have my adapter made, this will now fit properly on the frame. Now, the next thing that I ran into, and I believe it'll work, is I actually may have to add standoffs to this mount actually. Was originally this frame is designed so that the strap runs underneath the stack. But as you can tell, actually it could work. I didn't really incorporate that. I didn't think of it when I actually made it. It's like in the way a little bit, but we will definitely make this work. If honestly, I could make a TPU mount, but I would like to make the battery strap work just because I think the strap would be a little more durable. So let's get this on and I will be right back. So how I'm going to be mounting this is I actually have a set of M2 hardware screws, and although I see these holes are a lot bigger, they're designed for the countersunk screws. What I'm going to be doing actually is I have washers that I'm going to put so that these actually fit well and properly. So how it's going to go is I have, obviously I'm not going to use these lengths, but there's going to be shorter ones that come up, and I'm going to put little nuts here. Since this has rubber like offsets, these little grommets, it'll hold it off just enough of this little mount I made, so it's not touching and won't arc. It really can't arc because this is actually a heat sink. So yeah, let's get this on. So with my mount in place, this is what it looks like. I think it looks great. I have long enough screws, the 30 by 30. I know they're a little crooked, but they do stand up straight. That this goes on now. Now, if I am correct, this should go on properly. If the screw would line up. And I know some people watching this are going to be like, well, why did you do that? Because now you can't screw it from the top, or the bottom. Well, I'm just going to put the nuts on top because I'm actually going to be mounting the 04 Lite on top of here. So we are pretty much all set for the next part, I believe. I actually want to make sure. Oh yeah, we are good to go. Whew, they just fit. Sorry, I had to make sure the screws fit. Yeah, we are all set to start soldering now. So to start, what we're going to want to do is actually cut the wires to length. Now with the ZIGZAG frames, since one side of the one side of the arms is higher than the other, we actually have to be very specific. So for me, I'm actually thinking about just running them off to the side like this, because it's also got to sit here and go right down to this pad here, just like so. Something actually, you know what? This like wrapping here, this wire wrapping, just to protect the motors and keep it nice and clean. So we're actually going to cut these to length and install that really quick. And the rule of thumb to really do this is make sure there's enough slack in the wire so that in the event of a crash, it kind of just doesn't just, you know, rip and it's like not fun and break something. You also don't want too much slack, because if it flies up in the middle of like flying, it can get cut. The propellers can cut the actual wiring. Sorry, I cannot speak. So I think it's gonna look a little something like this. I think that's gonna be good. So actually, we're gonna go like this. I have to hold my thumb right where I want it. Take my cutters and go just here. I always try to give a little extra just in case. Boom. And sometimes I like to save this wire just in case for a little, just like if I make mistakes, it's always good to have like that wire. And yeah, you have a little something looking like this. Alrighty, we are now back with all the motors wired up, and I think this came out very nice. I'm very happy with the product. I was able to get the motor wires on. I know these look a little weird in the back, but I said the same thing with how it was ran. I think I should have ran the wires underneath, but honestly, it's not a big deal. I like how it came out either way. Motors are all wired up, and I like to do a test. This is the point of the video where I'm actually going to show what this does. This is a smoke stopper. So what it detects is it sends a small amount of current through the build, just enough to test if everything is soldered and connected correctly, powered from a battery. Now what happens is, if this doesn't, actually I'll just show you. So when you turn it on, boom, you get a light. You can set it to a 2 amp or 1 amp threshold. What happens is, if something is, let's say, bridged or something is not on correctly, instead of this booting up green when we go to turn this on, it'll actually be red, indicating that I have to go through all my joints again to make sure everything's soldered correctly, and so on and so forth. So we're actually going to connect this, and we're going to turn this on and make sure everything is on correctly. We didn't get smoke, everything is connected, and we are ready to move on to the next step. Now the next step being actually is wiring our receiver. Now with these boards, since this build, usually you're supposed to put a 20 by 20 stack, or you know, you're supposed to really put a 20 by 20 stack, which is smaller and has 2 boards, a flight controller, and an ESC separate, not AIO all in one like this is. So I'm going to just be instead soldering directly to these pads here, which I actually may have to remove this. I didn't think this through. No, I have pads available. So a little quick. So if you don't know how receivers work, basically there is a TX and RX pad on here that communicate with the receiver and the flight controller. Obviously there's a 5-volt and ground to power it, but the TX and RX part, if you don't know how to wire a receiver, it's basically the simple end of it is this has to talk to this and this has to talk back to this. So TX and RX, there is a TX and RX on here and a TX and RX on here. T on here goes to R on here, and T to here goes to R on here. So they have to be opposite. It can't be T to T and R to R. It has to be T, R, R, T. Okay? Because if it does that, it won't communicate properly, and it'll just basically, it won't break. It'll just be like, it won't work. It'll just turn on, but it won't work right in beta flight. So, next, let me move everything out of the way. See, clean space. You gotta have a clean space. Can't be messy. All right, so this is our receiver. And you can tell it is very small. So I'll show you what I'm talking about here if the camera focuses. So let me see if I can get it to, I don't know if you can see it, but here on the end here there's a T and an R. See if I can get it to focus. Hopefully you can kind of see it. There's a T and the R on these two pads here. They're very small, but they're going to go to here. So we're going to get this soldered up, and I will be right back. What's also nice about this receiver, and I forgot to mention, is it comes with the plug. It already has the connector here, so you only have to just plug it in and solder the one side. So plug and play is becoming big now in the FPV industry, allowing people to get into it. So just a little side note. Also forgot to mention, some of the best things you can get in FPV is the stickers. Stickers are always so cool. Alright, sorry, here we go. Okay, with the receiver all wired up, we're going to do a quick smoke check just to make sure nothing bridged. And my joints look pretty good. I don't think anything bridged. Actually, I'm a little concerned, but let me just see. There's the one joint, the T and the R. I used a little bit of solder, too much, I think. It's like a little bit of a mushroom, so I'm going to have to see if it is good. Check that out. We are all set, ready to go. Now we just got to set her up in beta flight, but we're going to do a little more hardware installation, and we will go from there. Now it's time to install the 04 air unit lite, which I believe, and should work properly. If we get it out of the bag here, if it wants to come out of the bag. Alright, actual casing for it. The mounting casing, which I would love to get open, if it would let me, with actual hardware. I don't want to lose any of those screws, because those screws actually are pretty valuable. Alright, there we go. A little mounting grommets for the actual board. It comes with 4 of them. This is going to lay on top. If it would load, hopefully it plays nice. Which I got to figure out how I'm going to mount everything, but this is where I go like this, and it'll basically look a little something like this. Everything goes on perfectly, which actually does make me very happy. I feel like it's hitting something, and I think it's the actual capacitor wire. From what it feels like it is. Oh, there we go. So everything goes on like beautifully. As you can see, it'll look a little something like that, and the top will go right down on top of it. I am freaking stoked to get this thing built. So instead, I just kind of wanted to do a little recap of how the drone is so far. I have made some tremendous changes to this. Since I went to my local chapter and raced this, I noticed that this camera mount that I made was not sufficient at first. It was something else, but I decided to make an adjustable one, since it's honestly ridiculously fast, even with CAC firmware and RPM limiters. I'm also going to be swapping out these motors to spec, which are going to be 1750 kV motors, either the Xylos here or the Neons from Meps Kings that I have in my bag here. But I just want to let you know that this drone is actually pretty good. It's been flying very well. I've threw on my own tune that I have. overall, the drone is great. And if you guys want to see another build video, let me know. It could be a 5-inch, or if you guys want to see like another freestyle build, a racing build, just let me know in the comments below.